Hello. How's everybody today? Probably grabbed the wrong mic. That's all over there. It's fine. Good morning. Morning, phlegm. Welcome to Cedar Creek, ladies and gentlemen. Happy that you are here with us. My name's Matt. I'm just going to run through some announcements here for you. If you are new here today or visiting once for your first time or second time, we have some green cards. They're in the back of the seat that's in front of you. Unless you're in the way back, then they're actually behind you. But if you wanted to, you can fill one out, fill out the info, and you can drop it in the offering box in the back there. It'd be a great way to get to know you, learn more about you, and meet you. Speaking of the offering box, if you are a regular here at Cedar Creek, you like to tithe or give some money, you can, again, put it in the offering box. We don't pass anything around, so whenever you want to freely give, you can. Feel free to do it whenever you're comfortable, whenever you want. Most people do it during the break or as they're walking through the door, or if you really feel inclined to do it in the middle of Rob's teaching, I won't stop you. Okay, we have a children's wiggle room. If your little ones have wiggles inside of them and they need to get them out, you can go out these doors to the left, down the hall, through the buff dude security team, and there at the end of the hall to the right, there's a little room there that will be live streaming the service, and you can let your kids run around in there if they need to. We have a mom's breakfast coming up. That's going to be July 17th, so that's coming up right this Saturday. It's going to be from 9 to 11:30 a.m. Breakfast and time with other moms. I am not a mom, so I did not go, but I heard nothing but good things about it, so definitely go. I guess you go to learn how to be a mom or something like that. Let's see here. We also have the Justice Run. Well, we don't have it, but the Justice Run is happening again this year. It's July 21st, the 14th annual one. You can volunteer or donate. All proceeds will go to Fierce Freedom. They fight local. They're a local nonprofit. They don't fight locals. They're a local nonprofit who fight human trafficking. There you go. My wife, Brianna, is kind of spearheading that for our church, so if you guys want more information, you can track her down and ask her about that. All right, one more thing here for you guys. Change for Kids, Hope Gospel Fundraiser is happening this year. I have some info on my phone. I'll just pull it up real quick. I wasn't here last week, so I didn't hear the announcement. But on Hope Gospel's website, it is going on. Deadline to turn in all your loose change is going to be Tuesday, August 10th. From 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., which is how long they're open. All proceeds will benefit the Hope Renewal Centers for Women and Children. And Northwestern Bank will actually match the first $5,000 donated, so that's cool. Kids who donate will receive a free ice cream certificate, so sorry adults, but your kids can. And the drive-up drop-off locations are Northwestern Bank in downtown Chippewa Falls, Northwestern Bank in River Prairie, Altoona, and Hope Gospel Mission Administrative Office. So again, you have until August 10th to donate all your loose change. All right, without further ado, I'll step away.
All right. Well, good to see everyone here on a beautiful summer morning. That's what we're going to talk about today. We've been going through, every year in the summer, we go through a series that takes the whole summer. And we've been walking through the Apostles' Creed, which has been really fun, but it's pretty academic, and it makes you think, and that's good. So we thought it might be good to take a couple breaks throughout the summer and just talk about something different. So we're going to take a little bit of a pause from the Apostles' Creed today. We'll pick that up again next week. But today we're going to talk about summer, which it is summer, and so it's fun to talk about this. And we do this from time to time where we'll just take a look at what's going on around us, look at the season, what's happening in the world around us, and we do that for a specific reason, not just because it's summer and we like it, but that's certainly true, but there are specific reasons why we want to do this, why we want to kind of see what's going on around us. The physical earth, the world that we live in, does something very, very, very powerful. And it was designed in a way to do this thing. And what that thing is it points to and leads us to God. The physical world we live in, the world that you and I wake up in every day, the world that we walk in and experience from the time we're born to the time we die and leave this earth, this physical world was designed to point to God and to lead us to God. And God talks about it a lot in the Bible in those terms. Like here in Psalm 19, verse 1, it says, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands." God made this physical world to point to him, or to give us evidence that he's there. And so when we look around us, we see God's fingerprint. We see God's handiwork. That's what it says. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. You know, if there's an artist that I really like. He painted outdoor pictures around the turn of the last century, in the 1910s, 1920s. He painted lots and lots of pictures of outdoor scenes. And I really like his work. And when I see one of his name was Philip Goodwin. When I see a Philip Goodwin painting, I can recognize it. Aha, I know who painted that because I recognize his touch. In a lot of ways, that's what this physical earth is. It's God's creation. It's God's handiwork. And so when we see it, we know, hey, there's somebody behind this. And there's evidence there of God. There's evidence of his creation. And when I see this, I see something that he made, and it points me to him, but it does something even more than that. It doesn't just point us to him, this physical world. It draws us to him as well. It stirs our mind, and I see this earth, and I say, somebody made this. There's a hand, there's a power. I recognize the Creator here, and that's an intellectual thing, and it points me to God, but it does something else. It stirs my heart. It stirs my soul, and it doesn't just point me to God, it draws me to him. It makes me long for him if my heart is soft. That's an amazing thing, guys. We wake up and live in this amazing 3D, completely animated, real-life picture of God that points us to God and draws us to God. And we need that in this world. We need that in this world. And the reason is because we don't see God physically face to face. You know, when God created you and me, God created this world. He created us. God says that he knew you before you were born. In fact, if I understand the scriptures correctly, God knew you from the beginning of the world. God could look into the future and could see you, and knew your face, knew your name, knew when you and I were going to live. God created you. He sees us. And his desire, the reason he created us, is so that we could relate to him. God's desire was that you would know him and relate to him and experience him and grow close to him and talk to him and interact with him just like we do with each other. And that happened in a physical, face-to-face way at the very beginning of creation. But we don't see that now, do we? I don't see God physically face to face like I see you, like you see me. And the reason is because of sin. Sin is humans, I think the only thing in all of creation that can sin, I don't know if this is true or not. The only thing in creation that I think of that we can sin, that we can see, is us. And sin is turning our back on God. You created me to know you. I don't want to know you. You created me to be loved by you. I don't want to be loved by you. You created me to be provided for, to follow you, to serve you. I don't want to serve you. I'll go my own way. It's rebellion. At its core, sin is rebellion. You and I, when we were given an opportunity to live in perfection close to God, we turned our back on it. We rebelled. And God says, all right, if that's your choice, you get it. You want to turn your back on me? You will now live your physical life apart from me physically. But God so loved you and I that he wouldn't leave us there. And his desire has always been to know us. And so he gives us an opportunity to come back. And that's a story for another day. But really the story of Christianity is God giving you and I an opportunity to have our rebellion paid for. to have our treason undone. God loved you so much that when you had turned your back on him and left, he sent his only Son, Jesus Christ, who came and paid the death penalty that you and I earned so that you and I could come back home. And we have an opportunity as humans to have that relationship restored the way that God intended it. And if you accept Christ, that happens, and God comes and lives in us spiritually now, and someday we'll leave this earth and see him face to face physically again. But in the meantime, this world is still separated from God. And so in this world, we don't see God the way we could or should or will someday if you've accepted Christ, but God does not leave himself without that witness. You see, sin kind of darkens and clouds our relationship, darkens and clouds our picture of God. So God does something. He uses this physical world to do what we just said, to point to him and to draw us to him so that we will seek him. Here in Acts 14, I like this verse, Acts 14. This is Paul speaking. Paul was a guy who started the first early churches back in the Middle East, and he lived in the same world that we did, where people wanted to know what was going on, had these spiritual questions, and were looking all different places. And Paul kept saying, no, listen, it's God. There's God who created you. And here he says, men, why are you doing this? They were trying to worship other gods. We too are only men, humans like you. We are bringing you good news, telling you to turn from these worthless things to the living God who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and the air and everything in them. In the past, he let all nations go their own way. Yet he has not left himself without testimony. He has shown kindness by giving you rain from heaven and crops in their seasons. There's a lot in there, but what it's saying there is, look, we have all these spiritual stirrings in us, and we can look in all kinds of different ways when God says, hey, I'm the one that can satisfy your spiritual longings, and only me. And in this world, he says, I've not left myself without a testimony. In other words, God says, I've given you in the physical world around you a picture of me, evidence of me. And as you look at it and see it and recognize it, if your heart is soft, it's also a doorway to me. It draws you to me. God created this world, put us in it, to point to him and to draw us close to him. And so we can understand and therefore seek for God. Because of the world God made, because of the physical world God made, we can understand him. And if we understand him and our heart is soft, then, therefore, we can seek him. And this is a very famous verse, Romans 1:20. Says this, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made. God's power and his divine nature, his attributes, can be clearly seen and understood from what has been made. And so we wake up every day with a picture and an invitation. You live every day surrounded by a moving, 3D, real-life action thingy. You're living in a picture of God and an invitation to God. That's amazing to me. And so it behooves us to pay attention. We live in our physical world, and so much of it we take for granted. We expect the sun to come up every day. I'm guessing that most of us don't worry about it a lot and maybe don't notice it at all. It goes up and it comes down, or we spin around. And every day it happens. That is a picture of God. And if you recognize the picture, it's a draw, it's an invitation. You and I see the birds and we hear the birds sing every day. I come upstairs in the morning, and if the windows are open, and even if they're not open, I can hear the birds singing. Many of us don't, the birds are singing, or we don't notice at all. That is a picture of God. It is clear. It is a window into God. And if you notice it, it draws you closer to Him. So it behooves us, folks, to pay attention to the world around us. And here's one of the fun things about where we live. Where we live, the picture changes. And what you see in the summer is not what you see in the winter. And what you see in the fall is not what you see in the spring. And it's fun and helpful for us to see this picture, to kind of have different windows open up, because every season we see different things about God. So what this is about today is we're going to look at what we're seeing now. When you look out that window, everyone look out the window. Don't look at the cars. But you see things out there. When we do this again in the fall, you're going to see different things. We do it in the winter, you're going to see different things. So what we're going to do here for the next few minutes is talk about, in summer, what do we see in the world around us that points to God and draws us to God, okay? That's what we're going to do here for the next few minutes. What do we see in the summertime that points us to God and draws us to God? And we're going to do it kind of by jumping off of this verse here. It says, since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature. So we're going to look at those two things. What about God's power do we see in the summer, and what about God's nature do we see in the summer? And remember, there's a reason for this. It's not just to see it and think, oh, that's cool. It's to see it and to understand and recognize God made this, and as you understand and recognize it, to let that draw you close, to stir your heart to seek God, okay? That's what we're going to do here for the next few minutes. So, in the summertime here in northern Wisconsin, northwestern Wisconsin, what do we see? Well, we'll start with, what do we see of God's power? What kind of things do we see in the summer that show God's power? There's many, many, many things, and the things that I share might be the same, might be different than the things you would see. But here's a couple of things that I see when I look at the summer that show me power. And one is just the summer night sky. In the book of Job, I don't know how many people read the book of Job a lot. Job is a book that is a difficult read because it's so emotionally troubling. All kinds of things in there when you see the things that happened to Job. But in very, very brief terms, Job was a man who loved God and served God, and some terrible things happened to Job that God saw and let happen. So Job was a man who loved God, terrible things happened, and God didn't preclude them, God didn't stop them from happening. Job then, because of that, got into an argument, a fierce, emotionally charged argument with God. And basically what he said is, God, you are not fair. This is not fair. I'm a good guy, and these horrible things happened to me, and you didn't stop it. And so much of the book is Job venting to God, and I can understand it. And if you read the book of Job and see what happened to him, you'd understand it as well. The end of the book is God answering back. God speaks to Job, speaks to him, interestingly, out of a storm. A storm rolls in, and Job hears God speaking to him directly in the storm. And almost the entire thing, it's the last 4 chapters, chapters 38, 39, 40, 41, 42. That's 5 chapters. 5 chapters. It's God speaking to Job and telling Job, listen, Job, you don't know what you're talking about. And almost everything God says points to nature, points to creation. God was telling Job, you know what? You don't understand me. You could understand me because everything that can be known about me, you see it, and so I'm going to show you who I am based on the physical world around you. And that's what it is. And so we're going to spend some time back there. But it helps me here in Job. One of the things that happens or that we see that shows God's power, and there are many, many, many things here, but one of them is the night sky in the summer. How many stargazers are there? I mean, do people like to do that? Go out and look at the stars? Man, I would encourage you to do it. It's harder these days because there's so much ambient light. Just get out of town, go north a couple of hours, and you will see some amazing things in the sky. Here in Job chapter 38, I read verses 31 and 32. It says, God speaking to Job says, can you bind the beautiful Pleiades? I can't pronounce that. It's a little constellation, the Pleiades. Anyone know how to pronounce it? What is it? Pleiades. It's a three one. It's almost like the Little Dipper. Anyhow, God is saying here, can you bind the beautiful Pleiades? Can you loose the cords of Orion? Can you bring forth the constellations in their seasons, or lead out the bear with its cubs? The summer night sky is different than the winter night sky. And it is amazing to see all of the heavens changed, and the array of the heavens changed as the seasons turn. Two of those constellations that are referred to here, one of them is the Pleiades, the other one is Orion. Probably most folks are familiar with Orion. He's got the 3 stars, that's the belt, and the 3 stars, that's the sword. These constellations, you have to have an imagination to see to see this stuff there. But Orion is a very famous constellation. Who saw Orion last night? Nobody, because you can't see him. He leaves in the summer. He throws his leg over the west gate and disappears. There's an old poem that talks about that. He's not around now, but there are different constellations around now. Anyone look at the swan last night? Swan's out there tonight. The Northern Cross, you can see the Northern Cross very clearly right now. The night sky changes in the seasons, and that's what it says there. Can you bring forth the constellations in their seasons, or lead out the bear with their cubs? Looking at the sky at night is an amazing instruction to you and I that we have an incredible Creator. The most famous constellation is what, probably? The Big Dipper. We can see the Big Dipper all year long. Did you know that if you understand it, you can tell what time it is and what season it is by looking at the Big Dipper? See, the Big Dipper spins around the North Star every 24 hours. Makes a big spin. But depending on what season it is, it'll be in a different place at different times. In the summertime, in the early evening, when it just gets dark, the Big Dipper will be in the west. So if you're looking at the North Star, the Big Dipper will be kind of sitting on its flat top. Who cares? I care. Because it shows me cycles. It shows me security. It shows me the stars go in order, and God says, I see them, I hold them in my hand, I name them, and I bring them out every season. We see incredible power. We cannot move the moon. We can't move it. We can't go up there and take the moon and put it in a different place. God moves the stars, all of the universe. In the summer, they're different than the winter. You go and look, and you are filled with awe. This is beautiful, and it shows incredible power. You rule the stars. Here's another thing in the summer that shows me great power, and it's storms, thunderstorms. We don't see thunderstorms so much in the fall or even in the spring. We see blizzards in the winter, but summertime for us is the time of thunderstorms. In Job 38, again, verse 24, it says, what is the way to the place where the lightning is dispersed, or the place where the east winds are scattered over the earth? Who cuts a channel for the torrents of rain and a path for the thunderstorms? The answer to that, God keeps asking Job all these rhetorical questions. Who did this? The answer is always, you did, and not me. And God asks Job, can you do this, Job? And the answer is always, no. Who cuts a path for the thunderstorms? You ever watch a thunderstorm? You know, it's kind of a joke in my house, and it's probably true in almost every household. When the warnings come on, severe thunderstorm warning, go in the basement, what does the dad do? Goes out in the backyard to look at it. There's great wisdom in that. I'm not kidding. There's great wisdom because you watch the storm roll in, that tornado that came through Elk Mound. It just was a couple hundred yards from my backyard. And when the warning finally came, severe tornado warning, it's in this place and moving that place, and the guy that was living with us and I, we looked at each other and said, that's right here. We should go in the basement. And it got deathly silent. Not a sound. And then suddenly we heard this roar in the distance, and the air started to get sucked out of the house, because as a tornado goes through, it sucks all of the air toward it. And so that's why in a tornado, oftentimes windows will blow out and not in. It's because it's sucking the air out of the house. That started to happen. And Adam and I said, we should go in the basement. So I went in the basement, walked in my bedroom, and looked out my big glass window. Not smart, but it was amazing. Because I saw a maple tree in my backyard get picked up and thrown over. I can't do that. I just watched it happen. There is unbelievable power that happens there. And it's in God's hands. He holds that. He says, I have the lightning in my hands and I disperse it. Are you kidding me? I cut a channel for the torrents of rain. I know exactly where it's going. I know which tree will get knocked down. You watch a thunderstorm. You watch those thunderheads build, and the lightning and the thunder. It is God's power on display for you. Dad's not so dumb after all. You go out and you see God. You see God's power. So what do we learn from that? We see God's power, and there are many other things in the summer. What do we learn from that? How should that influence me? That's evidence of God. Well, how does that draw me to God? Well, I think it does two things. It fills me with fear and awe. And they're both good. He brings the clouds to punish men or to water his earth and show his love. Two things there. His incredible power is on display, number one, to show that he is God and the judge and not to be trifled with. I went and took pictures of oak trees after the tornado that had been just twisted. Just like you and I would take a toothpick and break it and twist it and bend it around and do whatever we wanted to. Huge oak trees, 3 feet across on the stump, twisted and shattered by the power of God. He is a fearsome judge. But he is also filled with love. He sends these storms and they water the earth. When I see God's power, it fills me with fear and awe. And you may think, why would that draw me to God? When we see a God who is completely just, completely right, and not afraid to do what is right and to punish what is wrong, something inside of us longs for that. When we see a God who can do whatever he wants, we stand in awe, and that draws us to him. There's nothing wrong with fear if you fear the right thing. God's power fills us with fear and awe, and that's good. All right, that's power in the summer. And again, we could talk about so many other things, but let's kind of move on. It also talked there in Romans about God's divine attributes, things that are true about God that we can learn. What are those? Well, I got a couple here, and there's many. Here's one thing I think in the summer particularly we see that's an attribute of God, and that's this, that God provides for us. God is a provider. Summer is the time of plenty. I'm old-fashioned, but those of you who know kind of classic American music know the Porgy and Bess song, Summertime and the Living is Easy. And that's the truth, isn't it? When you wake up in the morning, you can go outside and not freeze to death. You can leave your car parked in the driveway. You don't have to hide it from the snow and the frost. It's easier living in the summertime. Everything is easier in the summer, and we see God's provision just surrounding us. Here in Psalm 65, I'll find it here. Verses 9, I'll start reading in verse 9. It says, "You care for the land and water it. You enrich it abundantly. The streams of God are filled with water to provide the people with grain, for so you have ordained it. You drench its furrows and level its ridges. You soften it with showers and bless its crops. You crown the year with your bounty, and your carts overflow with abundance. The grasslands of the desert overflow. The hills are clothed with gladness. The meadows are covered with flocks, and the valleys are mantled with grain. They shout for joy and sing. You care for the land and water it. You enrich it bountifully. I had to drive to La Crosse the other day. And if you've driven down Highway 93 to La Crosse, there's a couple different places. Right before you get to Oliva, just north of Oliva, and then just south of Arcadia, you get way up on a ridge. You go really high on a ridge that goes down on both sides of you, and you can see for miles in both directions. This time of year when you go, it's just such an amazing picture because you get up on those ridges and you look, and it's just cropland filled with crops. And there's a berry farm there by Oliva, and you see the blueberries, and you see all of the different farm fields, and it's just it's a picture of provision. And I think we can take that for granted sometimes. You know, you drive past those cornfields and the soybean fields and the oat fields. You drive past the apple orchards, and you see all of this stuff growing. It's like, well, that just happens all the time. That's not a big deal. It is a big deal. It is a big deal because without that, you and I would not eat. We cannot create food for ourselves. We can't. We have to use what God gives us. We can manipulate it. We can't create it. You and I cannot create food for ourselves. All we can do is take what we have and use it. And every summer, we're surrounded by the provision of God. You know, one thing that I was listening to, we all listen to the weather reports, right? What's the temperature going to be? And is it going to rain? And we never want it to rain. Yeah. Oh, okay. We don't want it to rain, but this picture should show you the deep and unbelievable love that God has for you. Because if that didn't happen, you would die. It's that simple. If that did not happen, we would all die. Without rain, nothing grows. If things don't grow, we don't eat. It's that simple. And yet, I don't have this verse, but it's in Matthew 5. I don't have it on here. It's in Matthew 5. It says, God shows his great love. He sends rain on the just and the unjust, on the righteous and the unrighteous. God sends rain so that you and I can eat. Ever think about that? He sends rain so that you and I can eat. I like it when the weatherman says it's going to rain because it reminds me, God, you love me. It really does. And I'm not exaggerating when I say when it rains, I'm almost always or very often moved to say thanks. Thank you, Lord. Now I got to mow my grass, which I'd rather not do. But the corn is growing, which I'm really glad for. And so in the summertime, we see pictures of God's provision all the time. Here's one. On Saturday mornings, you go down to Phoenix Park, and you walk through the farmer's market, and you see all of that stuff sitting there. God caused every bit of it to grow. Every single carrot was his creation. He understood it. He made the seed. He gave the soil that it could grow in. He sent the water to moisten it. Everything you see at the farmer's market is a picture that your Father is providing for you. Do you think that when you see that? Or do you think, man, I don't like Brussels sprouts? I think that too. Or, man, I really like carrots. And that's good. I like this and I don't like that. And that's good. That's good. But over it all, do you see, I am looking at a picture of how much my Father loves me. And that's what it is. That is exactly what it is. It's a picture if we see it. And we're surrounded by it. It's berry season now. And yesterday, I went out and picked black caps. This next picture here, these are black caps, black raspberries. I picked a huge bucket full of black and red raspberries together, and I'm making jelly this afternoon. And the ditches are full of them. You walk out where I live, you walk anywhere in the country, and the ditches are full of these things. Food just growing in the ditch. And as the summer goes on, it changes. It starts with the strawberries early in the year, and then now we're into the black caps and the raspberries. Then it's going to be, probably next is the blackberries probably, and the wild grapes, and the wild plums are going to grow, and then the apples. And we just see this progression of provision all through the summer. And it's the same with other things. In the spring, people pick mushrooms and asparagus. And Chris Birch knows where mushrooms are, and he won't tell me. And Mark Anderson knows where asparagus is, and he won't tell me. But I know where cherries are, and I'm not telling you, so there. But we see it. We see it. You walk down the road, and you see, and it's so easy to miss. So easy to miss. All those rotten raspberries keep growing in my flower garden. Oh, my goodness. Those raspberries are a picture of how much God loves you. Because food comes out of the ground that you could not get on your own. Food comes out of the ground that you and I could not create on our own. It happens because God made it happen. He's an amazing, amazing God. This is fresh salsa season. And if that doesn't show you that God loves you, I don't know what will. Oh, I love fresh salsa. You know, you can get salsa in a can. It's great. It's good. I like it. I like Mrs. Renfro's. It's very good. You can, get it fresh at the grocery store in the deli. There is nothing like going into your little garden or going to the farmer's market and coming home with a couple of tomatoes, a jalapeno, maybe a red pepper, some fresh cilantro, a little bit of garlic perhaps. You cut all that up, mix it all up. Put a little bit of olive oil in there. It is just, oh my gosh, that tastes so good. And it's a little bowl of fresh love. It's a little bowl of unbelievable power, incredibly imaginative power, harnessed and handed to you, and it tastes good. Think about that. That is a little condensed power holding the universe together, creating things that are they're impossible for us. I cannot create a tomato, no matter how hard I try. Only God can do it. Only God makes things grow. We can manipulate, but we cannot create. When you eat a bowl of fresh salsa, it is the power that holds the universe together, condensed and handed to you in a way that makes your heart glad. That's what it is. It's easy to miss because it's like, oh, that's fresh salsa, and that tasted really good. And that's as far as it goes. I don't think it should. So when we see this provision, what should it make us feel? We see all this stuff. What should it make you feel? Well, it should make us thankful. Psalm 104 is another one of those things, kind of like the end of Job, that is just filled with pictures of God and his creation. Here in Psalm 104, verses 14 and 15, that's what it says. He makes grass grow for the cattle and plants for man to cultivate, bringing forth food from the earth, wine that gladdens the heart of man, oil to make his face shine, and bread that sustains his heart. When you eat, be thankful. When it rains, be thankful. When you walk down the street, even if you don't like raspberries, be thankful. Even if you don't like Brussels sprouts, be thankful. God made them and he gave them to us, and we see it in the summer. His great provision. What else do we see of God? Another attribute? Well, here's one, and again, this is I think maybe pretty basic, but I think it's good to remember. We just see God's creation. We see so many pictures of God's creation. And this is maybe those two combined, God's power and God's provision. But it's a little bit different. We see God doing and making things that are amazing. We see the fawns being born. Just the other day, well here in Job, God asks Job that question. He says this, do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you watch when the doe bears her fawn? Do you count the months till they bear? Do you know the time they give birth? They crouch down and bring forth their young. Their labor pains are ended. Their young thrive and grow strong in the wilds. They leave and do not return. The woods around here are filled with those little spotted fawns. I was coming home from up north about a month ago, maybe not even a month ago, a few weeks back, and I saw a deer cross the road in front of me, quite a ways up, and then just behind it was this tiny little thing. And I was maybe 200 yards away. And so I slowed way down, and this little fawn was following her. And I probably had been born within the hour because it was still real shaky, wobbling. And that doe stood over here in this ditch, and I stopped in the road, and we all waited for that little guy to cross the road. It took him a while, and everyone just waited until he got there, and then he followed Mom up into the woods. But the world is filled with these little creatures right now, isn't it? And it's amazing to us. That's another thing we cannot do. We cannot make a life. Can't do it. God does it. And we're surrounded by it. We're surrounded by it this time of year. I have cedar siding on my house. And the woodpeckers like it. And every once in a while, they'll drill a big hole through my siding, and if I don't plug it quickly enough, the little birds find that, and that is a great place to build a nest. And so right off my deck, there's a hole that I didn't fill, and now every spring, it looks like the same little bird comes and lays her eggs in there, and I just don't have the heart to plug it up. So I get to watch her go in and out, lining the nest, and I get to watch her going in and out, feeding the little ones, and then I get to watch the little ones come out. It just happens every year. God creates life, and we see it. It's marvelous. It's easy to miss because we see it all around us, but it's marvelous. Here's another thing that's easy to miss that is marvelous. It's just the flowers that we see, the changing flora of the summertime. And it changes a lot. And here in Matthew 6, it reminds me of something God says here in Matthew 6. See how the lilies of the field grow. They don't labor or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? See how the flowers of the field grow. You just go for a walk, and the ditches are amazing things. They really are. They're a picture of God. You watch the different flowers go, and it starts in the spring with certain ones, and all summer long the flowers change. I've got a little spot off my yard that I call the prairie. It's not the prairie. It's about the size of this room maybe. And I keep it mowed. Every spring I go through with a big brush mower and mow it down, and then all summer long I can watch the different flowers come up. And they change as the summer goes on. And if you've ever stopped and really looked at a flower, it is unbelievable. The beauty and the physics of it, what's going on in there. God is creating seeds as this happens, and the bees come, but the magnificence of how beautiful these things are. And I hope you don't think this is hyperbole. It isn't. You look at a flower, and if you spend time looking at it, it's amazing that it is beautiful. It is magnificently crafted. It is artistic. The colors are mind-blowing. And it just happens all around us. It happens all around us. We see animals. The animals change in the summer. Certain animals are here only in the summer. And God knows that. God understands that, and God made it that way. Here in Psalm 104, again, he says this, how many are your works, O Lord? In wisdom you made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. Anyone know what that is? Yeah, that's a kestrel. It's a little hawk. They eat other birds, which maybe isn't fun to think about, but I will say this. I have lots of bird feeders in my backyard, and I was standing one day looking at my backyard, watching all the little birds, and all of a sudden, this thing came through and caught a bird in the middle of the air. It's like, wow, I don't know how you do that. But those things leave in the winter. They're not around in the summertime. But now if you drive down the road in the country, you can't help but see them. Look up on the telephone lines. Telephone lines are another amazing thing that God uses to show his power, because you see these birds on them. And those little kestrels, they're so pretty. You know, hawks, we have really, I think, only one hawk that sticks around all winter. That's the red tail. But then we have all these other ones. Go and look for a marsh hawk. It's a big gray bird with kind of a long, squarish tail, and it flies really low and slow over open fields. And they're so much fun to watch, but they're only here in the summer. They show up in the summer, and then they go south for the winter. This is an easy one, but it's such a good picture of these monarch butterflies that come here to see us in the summertime. And your backyards are full of them right now. The ditches are full of them right now. And these monarchs are incredible because they fly to Mexico in the fall, and then they fly back here in the spring, and we get to see them reproduce. My wife is good. She likes to do this. She went and found a monarch caterpillar, just the other day on some milkweed, and she brought it in and set it in a jar. Missy Fellingsby does this all the time too. Many of you have probably done this. And so that little caterpillar will eat the milkweed leaves until it gets to a certain point. Then it'll attach itself to something, and it just hangs there. And it looks like a J. It's hanging there. And we watched it. We happened to see this one catch it. It only takes, it's like 2 minutes. It goes from a caterpillar to a chrysalis. You ever seen that happen? Anyone ever seen that happen? You could see this happen in real life this week. You go out and find milkweed. You look around. It won't take you very long. You'll find a monarch caterpillar. Those are those green and black striped ones. You take it in. You put it in a jar with some holes in it with some milkweed, and you will be able to watch this if you watch, and if you get lucky, he'll hang there, and suddenly his skin will break open and shrivel up, and he will go through all these gyrations and turn into that little green chrysalis. And he'll hang there for a couple weeks, and then, if you're careful and lucky and watch, you'll see him come out as this. It is physics and biology beyond belief. I'm going to say that again. It is physics and biology. It is science that the most intensely intelligent scientists can't really figure out and for sure can't replicate. Instead, we stand back and say, wow, that is really, really cool. This thing came from Mexico, laid an egg, turned into a caterpillar, did something, became a chrysalis, turned into mush inside there, and then after a while it came out as this. That's just nonsensical. That's a fantasy story there, isn't it? That's a Marvel comic book, only it's real. It is real. And you and I see it all the time. So, as we see God's creation around us, what does that do for us? Well, it just does that. It fills me, and I think it should fill us with wonder and joy. Wonder and joy. Psalm 145. Verses 10 and 11 says, all you have made will praise you, O Lord. Your saints will extol you. They will tell of the glory of your kingdom and speak of your might. All your works praise you, O Lord, and I will too. All your works. I look around and I see your incredible works, and they're singing joy and praise to you, and I will too. I will praise you. I am filled with wonder and with awe as I see the world that you've made. Now, there are more things than this, guys, but my encouragement to all of us is not to miss the show that God is putting on for us. What's happening around us, God designed it, and He put us here, and He asks us to see it, and as we see it, it does two things. It points us to God. It reminds us that He's real. And if our hearts are soft, it also draws us to Him. It opens a window for us to see God, and it invites us to come in the door. Nature is not God. It's God's handiwork. But it points to Him, and it draws us to Him. And I'll leave you with this verse. If you're looking for things to read, by the way, read the last 5, probably 6 chapters of Job. Very instructive, very helpful. And read Psalm 104. Psalm 104, the entire thing is God saying, here's what's all going on around you in nature, and here's what you can think about it. Those two things. But I'll leave you with one more verse, Psalm 104, verse 33. It says, I will sing to the Lord all my life. I will sing praise to my God as long as I live. That's at the end of a psalm where the psalmist is recognizing, God, you made an incredible world. I'm seeing this incredible world, and this is the result. I will sing to the Lord all my life. I will sing praise to my God as long as I live. Let the created world that God put you in, as the seasons change, the picture change, let that created world point you to God and draw you to God. Let's pray. Father, I just pray that that would be true of us, that we would be men and women, God, who see not you, but see your handiwork in the world that you made. And then, Lord, as we see it, soften our hearts and draw us to you. Let that be the window that we see you, but then recognize that you want so much more than for us to see you through a window. You want us to come in, to enter through the door, and to be with you. Help us, Lord, to do that. The world that we see is a picture of that. It's a draw, it's an invitation, it's your calling card. Help us to see it, to recognize it, and to respond to it. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, we're going to take a 3-minute break. If you have kids in Sunday school, please go get them. In 3 minutes, we're going to come back and sing some songs.